So I'll call our Town of Gibsons Committee of the Whole to order for September 24th, 2024. And we are meeting, we're calling to order at 3:30 p.m. On the traditional territories of the Skokomish Nation. And first we need to approve the agenda. Moved by Councillor Kroll, seconded Councillor DeAndrade. All those in favor? The motion carries. And as an introduction, before our delegation, I want to acknowledge our new youth representative to council, Melissa Verhoeven. And we've got this really successful, great program of youth representatives at council, and that was extremely clear just in the last week at the Union of BC Municipalities, where they actually have a program encouraging students to come from all over BC, and I think probably to some disappointment, but it was surprise too. Melissa was the only one who was there, at least on Wednesday. So it just speaks to the uniqueness of our program, and also the fact that we had a successful motion at UBCM through the Sunshine Coast Regional District on free student transit, which has been a long time movement here on the Sunshine Coast among students for a number of years now, actually get passed by the entire province. So that was a huge success. And Melissa was there to introduce the motion, at least with me. And then it was passed the next day. So that's something that we've celebrated with our students and let some of our previous representatives know, who are really happy to hear, because there's been quite a number of people who've been putting in hard work on that. And next step is for the Premier to add it to his election platform, let's hope, and see that implemented in the whole province in the coming months and years. Let's hope that we are. It's also been a huge success that free student transit is happening on the Sunshine Coast either way. And that's been from the leadership of our students as well. I just want to go to Councillor Kroll, who's been our liaison to our youth representatives, to speak as well, to welcome Melissa.
Thank you, Mayor White. For the benefit of those present, the Student on Council program was introduced in 2018. And it's been, we were leaders in the province with having a student on council, and it's been a community engagement. The Rotary Club, who also support the Interact Club at the high school, have stepped up and supported the program, both in kind and financially. And I can only applaud the initiatives that have been brought forward by the students. Our past students reintroduced the free transit. It's been broadly adapted or accepted by other communities in the province and across the country. So, it's been great. The accessibility committee that is now on the coast, it was actually introduced by, it was a transportation and accessibility committee that our students on council introduced. And now it's provincially legislated that all communities have to have an accessibility committee. So we're really looking forward to working with Melissa over the coming year. And we have the task of finding an alternate to work with Melissa. So hopefully we'll have another smiling face in the chambers. But looking forward to working with you.
So now I'd like to welcome Ryan Staley from Coastal Rides up to make a delegation on give us an update on how ride-hailing service has evolved on the Sunshine Coast and provincially, and as the approved ride-hailing service.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
It's the Passenger Transportation Board, right?
Yeah, through the Passenger Transportation Board. Yeah. So I'll give you, thank you for the invitation to come and speak. And Yeah, my understanding was that part of the reason for the invitation was to because you get many questions about why we don't have Uber here, and so maybe I can shed some light on that and explain what Coastal Rides is doing and how things are going. So thank you. So Coastal Rides is what we call a transportation network service or ride-hailing company. It's we have the same licensing from the Passenger Transportation Board as Uber. And so in the fall of 2019, the provincial government changed the legislation to allow these types of operations in BC. And I sent off the application in the fall of 2019 to operate here and potentially up the coast in Powell River as well. And in the end of February 2020, received approval from the Passenger Transportation Board to operate in what we call Area 3, which is all areas on Vancouver Island outside of the Capital Regional District, and then Powell River, and then Area 5, which is basically all of northern BC, the Sunshine Coast, and any of the Gulf Islands. So just transportation network service or ride hailing is all, unlike a taxi, everything needs to be booked and paid for online through our online system. There's no hailing vehicles from the street, and you always know that the driver is coming to pick you up before you're coming, before they come to get you. And then just like any other commercial passenger transportation business, all drivers need to have at least a Class 4 driver's license. I think there's somewhere around here where you can get it, just across the hall if you're interested. And then your vehicle needs to be less than 10 years old. And so just like Uber, the idea is that anybody could sign up, and as long as they pass the requirements, having that Class 4, having a vehicle that meets the 10-year age restriction, as well as passes a commercial vehicle inspection, as well as passing both driver background and criminal record background checks, then we can get them on the road. On the Sunshine Coast, obviously getting the license in the end of February 2020, I don't know if you remember March of 2020, but the world kind of changed. So we're at least 2 years behind in terms of where we thought we'd be from growing the business here. Some of the hurdles here in particular, compared to somewhere like Vancouver, where companies like Uber and there's lots of taxi companies. One of the big differences is that we are not pedestrian / traveling around the community without a vehicle friendly place in general, right? You don't have thousands of people wandering the streets, from dawn till dusk looking for these types of services. You think about Vancouver, robust transit system, fairly sizable taxi fleet as well. So the notion of traveling without your own private vehicle in communities like that is already well established. So it's a bit more of an uphill battle here to gain that ridership when our primary competition is really people driving their own vehicles. The thing that really changed and turned a corner for us on the Sunshine Coast was starting to work with some of the staffing agencies from Sechelt Hospital. They are, I don't know if you know, but 60 to 80% of the nursing staff at the hospital is travel nurses, and they're flown in and put up in accommodation, and we generally take them to and from work. So that's been enough to have us put on, in this case, salary drivers as well as our owner-operator contractors to make it happen. And recently, this year, we've also launched service now in Tofino and in Fort St. John, as well as we previously launched in Courtenay Comox and Campbell River. The big difference in a place like Tofino in particular is it's got a huge visitor population, as well as a sort of a younger working population. that is maybe doesn't have a vehicle, and also in that community there's a great pathway system as well as some transit. Also, the distances are a bit shorter. One of the big hurdles here is that we're covering essentially 100 kilometers from end to end of the coast with only a population that's probably similar to a few blocks in downtown Vancouver. So wait times can be long because if somebody's drivers in Seashelt and you're requesting a ride in Gibsons, they're coming from there and may already have a ride there. So it's growing here right now. We have about a dozen drivers, signed up in the community. Some of them, most of them are part-time and have another full-time job and do this on the side. And then we've got sort of a core group of about 6 people that are pretty much full-time. And so we can cover, we're online, sort of dedicated service online from 6 a.m. until 1 a.m. And then people can request a ride anytime, and it'll basically send a blanket message to all our drivers to see if somebody can get them. One of the big things that comes up often is accessibility, and we don't get enough inquiries to warrant putting an accessible vehicle on our system right now. But it is something that come up and something that's a concern that that I'd like to try to address at some point. But just for context, right now, for every trip we do, we have to pay 90 cents per trip to the passenger transportation branch, and that goes into a fund that subsidizes accessible taxis, accessible legacy taxis systems, mostly in Vancouver. If we had a wheelchair accessible vehicle, the trips that vehicle did would not have to pay that amount, but it's that amount is not enough to warrant purchasing a much more costly vehicle. If we wanted to add a service like that on the coast, we'd probably, the combination of not having to pay that 90 cents for that vehicle, along with some other dedicated need, and the one that's come up, and I've tried to discuss or discussed a little bit with staff at the SCRD is having an overflow from Handy Dart. In Vancouver, they have a program called Taxi Savers, where if somebody can't get their Handy Dart ride, they can order a taxi and they pay a reduced fare. So those are the kind of things where, with direction from council, from the staff of the SCRD, you could probably investigate a little bit more. That's sort of the update right now for me. We're trying to do a little bit more with pooled trips right now to and from the ferry, offering to sort of reduce costs and reduce fares. We've tried it sort of on and off, but right now we're offering a per person fare from the ferry at that time when the Sunshine Coast Connector usually ran, to try to create that connection between Langdale and Earls Cove. So that one, the connection there is sort of a 10:40 departure from Langdale that connects to the ferry from Earls Cove to Sultry Bay, and then there's a BC Transit bus that connects to that on the other side. So we're trying that right now. Obviously, low volume, low season, but we'll see how that goes. Anyway, happy to answer any questions if anything comes to mind.
Great. I'm sure there are some questions. I just want to ask something really basic to start things off. And I mean, it sounds like there's a lot of challenging factors you're dealing with, but essentially, is it true that the current fares are very much connected to the amount of drivers you have? And if there were more drivers, that might be the biggest driver or the biggest factor in reducing those fares.
Yeah, absolutely. So we do have a somewhat variable fare that goes down when a driver is nearby and available, right? And so pretty early on, I realized that nobody's going to go and pick somebody up in Gibsons when they're in Seashelt if they're getting like $5, right? So we have, you know, a minimum fare when a driver is a ways away that's, you know, higher, sort of $18-20. And yeah, having more drivers online and nearby will reduce those online fares. So the fare is sort of a balancing act between, making it lower when it makes sense, you know, when somebody's nearby and available, as well as making it enough so that somebody who's maybe sitting around at home, that they'll decide to actually go out and do that trip. Yeah.
And obviously, this same reality would apply to any multinational corporation that we're running here as well.
Yeah, I don't know if you've ever tried to get an Uber from Horseshoe Bay, but it can be $150 to go to downtown Vancouver. Right? If there's nobody, if they're going to try to get a driver to come from somewhere else, they're going to need to offer some incentives, right?
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Mayor. We use coastal rides often in our family, so
Okay.
good
Thank
job,
you.
thank you. Do you have a growth strategy? Like, can you share a growth strategy for more drivers? And out of the 12, where does the majority of them, is it spread quite throughout the coast, or is it weighted in any one particular?
It's weighted more towards Seashelt, right? We definitely need some more drivers that are based in Gibsons, particularly for those last minute late night calls from the ferry, right? If it's only 10 minutes to go pick someone up versus, you know, half an hour, that makes a big difference. In terms of growth, we're for the last little while, a lot of the work that I've been doing is on the systems for onboarding drivers, right? And you look at a big multinational company like Uber, and from a customer standpoint, there's the app, but actually the thing that makes it work is their ability to get drivers on board on the back end, as well as incentivize them to be online, right? I'm not a big fan of some of those sort of incentive tricks, and so we just pay a straight up percentage to drivers. And the new legislation that came in for minimum payment for ride hailing for online platform drivers, it basically doesn't matter for us because we're already paying what people need to be paid with the fares that we're charging, right? So it's a balancing act on those fares, right? And I think the way that we're gonna, other than having somebody online nearby, right away, the other way that we can reduce fares is by pooling people together, right? And that's it works when there's enough people going to the same place at the same time, right? So to the ferry, to the hospital at shift change, those kind of times it works. Otherwise, we're offering a lower fare, and the drivers get upset about that if they're going and only getting one person. Yeah.
And just following up, I've got Councillor Kroll too, but just following up on that legislation, I understand that's been a real significant challenge for Uber, and now they're having to pay people salary as well. And is that, do you know if that's increasing their fares at all?
I think the bigger impact is on the food delivery side. And I tried briefly to do the food delivery, and the very, first of all, getting restaurants on board is a whole other business that I didn't have time to get involved in really. But the second thing is that the variability in the time that it takes for a driver to go and get that order, and if it's not ready right then, right, or if it's ready right then it was sitting and it's getting cold. If the driver's waiting, then you're going from, potentially adding another 10, 15 minutes to their what they call engaged time, which is now you're required sort of that minimum payment. So that's why you're seeing companies like Uber adding a significant additional service fee to those food orders. The ride side, the fares are such that it's already, we can afford it. Yeah.
Councillor Kroll.
Thank you, Mayor White. I was it's a question. I've heard that, like, licensed taxi drivers, they have to have a vehicle and insure it and all that. But I've heard, like, with the Uber model, and I don't know whether it applies to you, you can actually lease a car and multiple drivers can share the car. Do you qualify for that sort of thing? Which might enable people, because having a relatively new car to provide service with is relatively expensive these days.
Yeah, certainly it's something we're working on. Like the Uber program I believe with Hertz, I think the vehicle is in the neighborhood of $300 a week. I don't know what the exact number is, but that's something we discussed it with Hertz early on, and I'm working on it with some other rental car companies. Yeah.
Councillor Lumley.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. I just wondered, you said you were working with the SCRD staff, and I know, I guess I was present for all the Handy Dart discussions. I'm not completely, I didn't agree with the funding model that they were using for their expansion, but their expansion was just for like specific times. It was like peak times, basically. They're saying, hey, we need another vehicle but people are only traveling at peak times, and then there was one day on the weekend that the drivers didn't work. So how did it go? Like, are you considered, do they almost consider you a competition for Handy Dart, like BC Transit, or no?
I don't think so. I think there's definitely there's interest from staff if they were directed to further explore. I think one of the issues is that the incentive to work with BC Transit is pretty great. They're funding almost half of the cost of the vehicles or more, and so it's more. And then BC Transit has a certain way of doing things, certain models, right? So there's definitely encouraging interest, certainly from staff there, but it may take a bit more direction to explore things outside of the BC Transit model.
Okay. Well, thanks for the presentation.
You're
And
welcome.
answering our questions.
Thanks for having me.
And it's definitely an important service these days, and we hope to see it expand. Now, I forgot when we approved the agenda that there are some people here who need to leave soon, or can't be here for a late meeting. And one involves, we do have Sue here. We like to get her out on the street. But I think more importantly, I think there's like a childcare rush for somebody when it comes to the 5.4 OCP and zoning amendment for a duplex at 528 Marine Drive. So I'd like to look at that one first. Is there any opposition or concern to that, to look at that item next? That works for everyone? Okay. So let's go to 5.4.
Hello. I'm going to bring up a couple of presentations. I'm going to do a quick summary of the planning applications, and then Scott Keck is in the audience, and he's going to go through and talk about the massing and the design and also shadow impacts. Okay, thanks. That's very nice of you. Okay, so this is a brand new application, and the property is located between the former Coles Marina and Marina House. Now, the proposal is for a duplex, which will be 1.5 stories from Marine Drive. And then it's 3 stories over a storage area from the seawalk. So you can see that seawalk elevation there. And then on the right-hand side, you've got a rendering from the seawalk. So you can see there's a variation in different materials, and you can see modulation of the building. Now, there are a number of applications that are involved in this proposal. And so the 4 that you see on the screen here are all to be considered by council. So the OCP currently is multi-unit special character, and we would be looking at changing that to a brand new land use designation, which would be residential waterfront. The zoning right now is comprehensive development area number 1. And so we would be looking at a brand new zone, residential waterfront. It's in the development permit area for form and character under DPA number 5 for Gibsons Landing. The development permit area is for multi-unit buildings, and it doesn't exempt duplexes. So this is where, because it's a duplex, it needs that DPA 5. And then the flood exemption too. So it's looking for a reducing the floodplain setback from 15 meters to 7.5 from the natural boundary. And then it has a flood construction level of 5.66 meters. Now there's lots actually of options here. And I think probably the best thing to do is to bring Scott up, and he can then talk about the proposal, and then we can come back to these options. So Scott, if you're ready. Okay. Should be on, and then I'm gonna put this on for you. Thank you. No worries.
Thank you so much. Sorry, thanks for accommodating me on the childcare thing. It's so nice of everyone. Oh, thanks. Good afternoon, councilors and mayor. Thanks for your time here. I wasn't going to talk too much about the design, actually. I wanted to mostly present this as a supplement to the existing application and talk more closely about sub-area D and a brief note on the shadow study as it pertains to the view protection of sub-area D there. You may remember this the previous architect on this project that presented last January had a lot of trouble meeting the kind of all the requirements of that sub-area D. We've certainly had our own challenges with that view protection. And we are asking for some relaxations to that sub-area D, not as many though. And so I can show you where I think the challenges are for really any development on this site, and in particular to that sub-area D. So this is the bylaw here, and really the most difficult part for me as the architect on this one was the next slide. Is the 6 meter setback there. And then above the 6 meter setback that you have from the water side is a 45-degree slope that is required there as a view protection. And that's difficult for us on this particular site. If you look at this, this is the Marine Drive there from Armours Beach all the way down to Grandma's Pub there at Gibsons Landing. That's the area in sub-area D right there. If you look at our site, which is right in the middle there, it's effectively the skinniest or most shallow site of the entire sub-area D collection of properties there. And so if you look at something like a site up above that has more than ample space to basically deal with that 6 meter setback, we don't have that luxury. So the 6 meter setback really encroaches quite a bit onto our lot. So looking in the projected plan view of where that setback lands is the red area would be considered an unbuildable area in plan view. But then if you go to the 3D kind of view of it on site there, you'll see that that's the kind of 3D projected view of the parameters of the build area in there. Now, if we were to consider a simple covered parking space onto the lot within the property, this is the encroachment that you would be dealing with there. And so literally just to service the site alone without requesting any relaxations to that sub area, all you would be allowed is on the north side are 3 parking spaces, basically. Anything more than that, you would be asking for a relaxation. This is the building here, which is, so what we have tried to do though, is meeting, it really as a kind of an answer to some of the challenges that the previous applicant had here, was to really meet the height setback. And so that was our primary goal, is to have that relaxed within the height there. And then also on the sides, on the north and south, we have a 1.5 meter setback. And then finally on the shadow study here, you can see the winter solstice, which is kind of the worst case scenario of what a shadow might do. On the left is our proposal, and on the right is just that 3D building parameter that you see there, so you can match the kind of difference of what is allowable versus what our shadow might create on the site. We're fortunate that the site in particular has a sewer right-of-way just above it, so those two lots just to the north are, as of now, unbuildable because there's a right-of-way there. So if I were to just overlay those 2 shadows, you can see in some way we're producing less shadow on that side there. We're actually creating less shadow because the front of our building on the Marine Drive side steps down a little bit versus what is allowed for that height there. And then where we are encroaching, as far as I can tell, is something quite small because we have large overhangs and stuff like that. So our building mass is kind of chopped up in a way. So that's it. Thank you.
Okay, I'll go to questions from council while you're up here. Are there any questions for Scott? Councillor DeAndretti?
Oh, sorry, Mayor. I think my question is more for staff regarding the bylaw. Is that okay that I ask now?
It's fine. I'll just see if there are there any questions for, I mean, we can always come back to Scott too if there's okay, go ahead.
Just a clarification, if this new land use designation and zoning are applicable only to lots 5, 24, 28, 30, and 34, which I believe is Area D. It's just a confirmation.
Yeah, go ahead.
So right now, the zoning amendment that's in front of you is just specific to this lot. And the idea is that going forward with the new OCP and the new zoning bylaw, it would be spread along the entire Marine Drive waterfront area.
Okay, other questions? Councillor Thompson?
Hi, thanks. What is the lot size coverage? I saw a notation about a suggestion to reduce to 75%, but what is the lot coverage that's happening there?
I don't have that information specifically in front of me.
I don't have my computer on me, but I believe it was 79%.
I know our FSR is 1.1. The site plan would have the coverage.
Maybe 77. That's what someone's speculating up here.
That seems about right. It wasn't far above, and it's in the zone. We put it as a site-specific amendment in the zone. I just don't have. Can you just go to the if you.
Are there any other questions in the meantime while we look that up? Councillor DeAndretti?
Yeah, this regards the bylaw because to me, this bylaw is appropriate for this site because it's very narrow. But my concern is The reason we give the 45% is exactly for the massing. And the previous development that we just passed had the 45% because it was such a large lot, deep, let's say. So my concern with the bylaw, and I don't know if I can, it's not about this, but because the bylaw, if it was expanding just for the narrow lots would make sense, but just say, okay, we don't need the 45% angle, that's to me concerning if there's a lot that is really deep, because now it's gonna be a massive.
Okay, does anyone want to take that up or bring up another point? Councillor Lumley?
Well, thanks through the mayor. Since I guess it's a zoning amendment. I mean, it's a case by case basis. So if some massive building came on the books, I guess we could just vote against it. But thanks for the shadow study, and the fact that this is like way better than the last projected building that's on this site, because that got voted down because it was a massive wall. This doesn't look like that at all. But I appreciate the shadows and everything. But you, as have you ever designed a building with no shadow? Have you ever done that? No? Okay. Because it's always a big ask for people for shadow studies, but I'm assuming there's going to be some shadows, yeah.
Okay, do we want to look at the recommendation? And there are options there too? Councillor, okay. I heard he spoke up. Well, we'll see if Councillor Kroll agrees, but
Okay.
go ahead with
Okay,
the...
I'm going to move. Hold on, I lost my page here.
Do you want to look at my screen?
No, I'm on it.
Page 68.
Yeah, 68 is option 1.
Yeah, I'll move option 1.
There's some optional stuff at the bottom there too, but we could talk about that as well. That's seconded by Councillor Kroll. So this is to give this OCP amendment bylaw first reading, and a number of other, and this includes having a public hearing on this for November 5th. I won't be here, so someone else is chairing for that one. I don't think I'm here for November 5th. Maybe I can zoom in to watch though. Yeah, the other wording on page 68 and up on the screen there. So any discussion on that? I will. Yeah, I want to echo that. We did hear a lot of concerns, and there were a lot of concerns from council about the previous proposal here, and I can see and hear that a lot of work was done to address those concerns in this new proposal, and that was kind of front of mind. A lot of the biggest problems with that, and especially the height, was something that the neighbors brought up. So I really appreciate that this proposal's addressing those concerns, and yeah, although I'm usually very reluctant to look at OCP amendments, this was one where it was kind of so obvious that it's just having that kind of density on this lot was just impossible. So it's completely necessary in this case. So those are my thoughts. And are we ready? Anyone else ready to vote? All those in favor? The motion carries. And do we want to look at, I mean, the CAC offer could be discussed another time, right? Or looked at another time?
Yeah, it can be discussed another time. You have an option of referring the application to the advisory design panel, which I would suggest because it has a development permit attached to it. And then you also have the option of asking the proposal to meet the 75% lot coverage. It's at 77% at the moment, and it's under a site-specific condition in the zone. So.
Okay, you've got those options for Councillor DeAndrade.
Yes, I would like to move to refer to the ADP, just because, we just went through a lot with Billy's Walk and with regarding this area. This is in front of Heritage Hill. I love modern designs, but there might be something, I don't know. I think it's important that we get the input from the ADP in this regard. Just to be fair with
Seconded by
other
Councillor Kroll.
developers.
It's,
I'm on the ADP, so it's good.
Why don't you just review it right now?
yeah,
We have half the ADP here.
yeah, right. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor? Motion carries. And do we, now the bit about the 75%, that's not, it wasn't a recommendation, but it's an option. It's like, it wasn't actually. Councillor Lumley?
Through the mayor, I just had a question, I guess, for the planning department. You were personally, I mean, I voted for it. It didn't really matter. It's a duplex, so I wasn't sure if we were wasting the advisory design panel's time. But you did say it's attached to a permit, so that's why you suggested it.
That's why I suggested it. So it needs a development permit for form and character, which would mean then we would bring it back with the minutes from the ADP and then a draft permit for you to authorize.
Okay, all right.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Scott. And now we'll go to 5.1, the Director of Finance, about financial plan preparation. And just following on a previous discussion, I'm not sure, we'll see, council may not be ready to put forward the recommendation at this point, which is fine, but we'll hear the report and have some discussion of the report perhaps and questions.
Mayor White, would you like me to quickly?
Summarize, that'd be, yeah, I think this is a good one to summarize because it's important.
Will do. So the subject of this report is the preparation of the 2025 to 2029 financial plan. And what this report is working on doing is shifting the town to, it already actually has a bylaw that covers 2024 to 2028. So of course in there's 2025. One of the issues about the 25 that's in there is it's kind of a first cut budget and it needs some revisions and improvements before you could use it as a final. So ideally you would shift the review of the first draft of 2025 budget and whatever was listed there as projects for 2025 into the second half of 2024, so you can get staff and all your resources definitely working on things right from the start of the year. So this report is primarily focused on trying to achieve that objective. And then as part of that, it says, well, that's great, but we will need some guidance from council on what kind of general inflation cost escalations would you agree for the update, not only of 25, but the rest of the years out to 29. And could you provide not a fixed suggestion for 2025 municipal taxation, but some guidance on a range you'd be comfortable with? Because of course, there's always give and take in budgets. So it's important to know whether we're looking hard for cost reductions or, and council is prepared to see service reductions that go along with those cost reductions, or whether there's some room to add some new things to the budget, which could be a lot of room or a little room depending on council priorities. So in attachment 8 of this report, there's a sheet that just shows all of the scheduled meetings for council and this committee for the remainder of 2024 on the right side of the page. And then on the left hand of the page, it breaks down the months and it kind of shows a steady month by month approach where the committee is considering subjects like this report, making suggestions, recommendations to council. It allows some time between the committee and council to finalize what council will actually adopt as its directions. The key things to be done in this process are first to address significant updates, and in September, council has already been working with staff on some major items. And then now in October, we're having a look at financial plan directions. This time it's in the sense of what are the biggest things out there, not what are the interests of particular departments or specific individual priorities, just overall from a big picture perspective, what big things have to be considered. And then we flow forward into an operations review, which will just be summary level of all the departments and functions and priorities. And if there really needs to be an addition or there's an opportunity to stop doing something, that's where that would be called out. With the council's adoption of those changes, that's what allows the finalization of the 25 operating budget. And then finally, there's a review right near the end of the year of what's on the 2025 project lists, and for the major ones or the problem ones, some kind of brief memorandum for council that allows you to assess what the likelihood of success is based on staff's list and what you know of these projects. And finally, concluding in December, hopefully there's a resolution from council saying, okay, here's the final version of the 25 operating budget, here's your final 25 projects list, and then we'll carry on with financial planning to the next year, but there we'll be looking longer term and considering often in the first quarter of the next year, there are announcements from senior government and things that impact how you finalize your financial plan. So that would happen then, and then you move on to tax setting, and finally you're done for a break and then start all over again. There isn't anything else that I wish to flag on Schedule A. And now, just a quick run through of some of the big items. These are dealt with in the discussion section of the report, but in terms of organizational performance, there's a note that staffing changes in 2025 are expected to be limited. So those are not this year going to require significant new money. In prior years, council has a lot of new money there. In terms of delivery capacity, the town has a huge list of funded projects, some of them really big. Those big ones are multi-year. At this point, staff and all the people we work with, consultants and contractors, are just maxed out to do it. But council does need to know that from staff's perspective, we are going to take a time out in 25 from making grant applications for for new grants, because we just don't have the capacity, even if we're awarded the money, but we will pick that up again in 26. The other one on that with big grants is senior government is increasingly sensitive about awarding big grants based on a schedule that you've provided them in your application, and then they're getting constant requests for revised end dates and so on. Asset management, the town has done a lot in recent years on it. One area that was left to last is town buildings, and it really needs to be funded. So that one is flagged. I'm not sure that it will be sold in 1 year, but it could be started for a multi-year effort to get it to the annual funding level it needs. The last one of, well, core items to look at from my time here is the regional considerations. One very important aspect there is the town is quite sensitive about the tax requisitions that come through from the regional district because they're so big. I have seen a few variations. One variation of information from regional district is not really anything, one version. Another version is occasionally or annually, at the end, pretty much at the end of their process, some people will come from the regional district and present, which is great, except the process is over. A third one that I've been part of more recently that does work, it takes a little bit of effort to get it started, is a pre-budget coordination meeting no later than October, where there's a quick review of who's providing what services, what they're charging for them, what's been going on. But more to the point, our senior elected have a very good idea between the area directors and mayors about things that keep sliding by that were supposed to be addressed. And this particular kind of meeting seems to be the one that, over a year or two of effort, finally resolves that. Once those meetings take place, then the two organizations just go their separate ways into their completely separate budget processes. But this time there can be an understanding amongst the group about what things will be covered there or what things will be changed. So it's a suggestion for council. The earliest that could be started would be in 2025. This report is not intending to suggest there be an October 2024 meeting, because they will have to be asked probably by the mayor in order to get something like this organized. Moving on, under the policy plan implications, there are a number of big items in progress. Under utilities, forming possibly a standalone utility for storm and drainage. The research work is being done now in 2024, and in 2025 would be public engagement and decision-making on whether that should happen or not. But making sure that anything the budget needs to do for it, it's flagged here. Also with utilities, it's been discussed apparently a number of times, but there could be a project work plan that actually spells out how the wastewater to meter-based rates based on water volumes could actually come into effect. And if that was organized and discussed at the same time as storm and drainage in 2025, then if it's a go, it could start for 2026. And also in there were a lot of difficult assumptions to make when the metering was introduced to the water system. And to be fair, it would be ideal at the same time to just check how that worked out primarily between residential and commercial users, and whether that's reasonable and should be left alone, or whether something needs to be updated. And last but not least, on the utilities front, the 2025 waste contract is up for renewal. That's for the garbage and organic curbside pickup part of the whole waste area. Oh, and look, there's more. There's also the 2025 collective agreement renewal, the 2027 RCMP contract transition. And just as a note to council, just letting everyone know that the core federal government contributions to infrastructure funding has been on pause since 2023. There have been no new applications in on the federal government BC shared funding model since 2022. And it's not clear when Canada is going to come back to the table. So that's the big ISIP infrastructure grants. I'd just like to now turn back in the report to public engagement. For the purposes of finalizing 2025, by the end of this year, the report is essentially suggesting in attachment A that there's a significant number of council and committee meetings. But if council thought that no, doing other forms of engagement in 2025 is maybe too late, there are some options. We could try and convene some informal question and answer sessions. Or we could be looking at these customized community conversations where there's a particular topic and we go and find the knowledge leaders in the community on that and discuss it with them. These are great options, but the one thing that came to my mind when I was writing them is the town is in the middle of doing the OCP, and that's exactly the kind of work the consultants are doing with planning stuff, and the public has a limited capacity to engage on all these surveys and public sessions. So maybe things on finance should wait until 2025. Maybe there could be one informal session that could be sufficient. So I wanted to flag that because it's up to council what the council feels is adequate public engagement. And in closing on the report, it makes a recommendation. It suggests Bank of Canada, it's carrying on with its target range of general price inflation of 1 to 3%, And they're very happy with 2, and right now it's at 2 and possibly going down lower. So that's the suggestion for the report, that general cost escalation 2% be allowed. And then overall, there's a suggestion based on, so the preliminary 25 budget called for a 9% municipal tax increase, and the 26 calls for an 8%. So based on what I've been able to learn here so far, I thought, well, I myself felt 9 was high. It's not clear to me how feasible it's going to be to drive it lower than 5, but I thought to suggest what might be doable and just suggest that at least we should be working in that direction. And that is the end of my recommendation. Thank you.
Okay, I've seen at least one speaker. I've got some comments. And a question too. I mean, I feel like this probably goes without saying, but when it comes to applying for grants, we'll definitely be applying for grants that will actually offset the projects in our capital plan that might offset taxation or utilities or things that we're already having to pay for. We're just not looking for new projects. I just want to confirm that, make sure it's
Exactly.
clear to council and the public too.
Timing for the next round of big projects that we would be ready to do after the ones we're started up now, we would be in the grant application timing. The correct timing for us is to get back into that heavily right from the get-go in 2026. For money, first money's maybe needed 2027.
But if grants come up that are like, for projects, we've got shovel ready right now and we've got reserves or taxation set to pay for, we'll still apply for those, right?
Most likely.
Okay, well,
But it seems my impression from going through the lists and looking forward is all the projects that are listed that the town intended to do over the next couple of years are funded. And yeah.
and then, point about the SCRD, just came back from a meeting on Monday, just yesterday. And things are looking like there'll be changes. They'll be looking like there'll be changes to the budget process there that'll be quite significant, so, which is a good thing. So sometimes we've thought that before and then it didn't really turn out that way, but it's looking quite serious this time. So there's probably a good time to start thinking about maybe having that early communication and seeing that if that's viable, fitting in with our both our new schedules for budgeting. And then public engagement, I think the last 2 years we've had really successful public dialogues that are usually pretty early in the process, and we need to continue those. I mean, I think that's the public expectation right now. We don't want to turn that on its head. It hasn't been a big production though. It's been just kind of going down to the public market, and it's pretty informal and just opening up dialogue to people and saying, what are your priorities? So there might be, the proposal we're seeing here might be add even more public engagement to that, but I do think at a minimum, we should definitely keep that going because there's been very good attendance and participation at those meetings. And I saw Councillor Lumley put up his hand first.
Yes, through the mayor, thanks for the presentation. The cynical person inside me said, you know what? Just take last year's SCRD budget and add 13%, and you'll know exactly. So, but if it is possible, and the mayor's, you've said that they're going to revitalize their budget process, but my suggestion or my ask, I guess, as a councillor would be prior to like staff level meetings with the SCRD, it'd be nice to have like a really, like, I don't want to say marching orders, but you really gotta, be prepared for, what at least, I know I can't speak for you, Mr. Mayor, but at least what I go through at these budget processes at the regional district, it's you're saying we're not going to add projects. They refuse not to add projects. Funding, all sorts of things have to change up there, and it's just costing the taxpayers. I mean, exactly, they come here with their budget after it's already done, and I remember, like, I don't know how long ago this was, but their operating budget, I took a 4-year glimpse at, like, the growth on the Sunshine, like through the regional district growth, and their operating budget, it was up over 50%. But growth was only up just under 7%. So it was like, and of course, there's no answers for it. So I think if the pre-budget meeting with the SRD could be a good thing if we can accomplish something in that. So that's my comment.
We're not looking at that yet until 2025. Yeah. But that's good. Thanks for that input. Anyone else have any questions or comments on this? And now we do have recommendations. This is committee of the whole, so I think if we do have some time, if we wanted to put forward this recommendation to just kind of give our staff some general direction on looking at some numbers here, we could do that. And as our CFO mentioned, even after we do it at council, it's still going to be a bit of a target. So I think we're safe putting forward the recommendation at committee of the whole, particularly, and still having some flexibility, especially before we take it to council. We could change it at council, but I just wanted to suggest that to council. Councillor Kroll.
I'm certainly prepared to move the recommendation that the Director of Finance has presented with this report.
Okay, is there a seconder? Seconded by everybody? I looked to my left first, so seconded by Councillor DeAndrade. Any discussion? All those in favor? The motion carries. Thank you for the report and all the thought you're putting into this. It is a lot much earlier in the year for us, which is good. It's definitely good. It's a transition we're having to make, though, for sure. I'm like, oh my God, I have to think about budget already, but it's good. Now to our bylaw enforcement officer. This is about proposed amendments to the business license bylaw.
Yes, thank you. I'll keep it really brief. We're trying to review most of our bylaws. Most of them are pretty outdated. This one in particular has not been changed in 32 years. So what we're proposing would be an increase in the fees, as well as sort of more housekeeping with it, because a lot of categories are pretty outdated, and then the addition of 2 new categories. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, looking to councillors who've got some thoughts on this. Councillor Kroll, I see your hand on the button.
Thank you, Mayor White. I certainly appreciate all the work that's gone into this report. It was sort of like, oh my God, it's daunting. And, I wasn't even aware we had some of these categories for businesses. So it was really very enlightening. One of the things that occurred to me, and I don't think we do it right now, particularly for contractors. If, a truck pulls into my driveway, I have no way of knowing that, unless I say, excuse me, do you have a business license? But have we ever considered offering decals or some sort of thing to particularly people who have mobile businesses, that they actually have a license in the community?
We actually spend quite a lot of time out when we're out and about looking at different contractors, and then we'll come back and see if they have an inter-community license, and then if they don't, that's when we'll follow up, and that seems like fair game.
Your follow-up.
Just as follow-up, it's sort of embarrassing, particularly as a counselor. I had an incident where I hired someone and then realized they didn't have a license, And I actually paid for them to get a license, and because it really is, I don't, so it would be just really useful if we did issue like a little sticker that they could put on their windshield of their vehicles that they've got, just so, hey, they've got a business license, they don't need to worry.
We used to issue commercial decals for businesses, but that program got stopped. We do get calls from residents asking if a business has a license. We're happy to answer that, and sometimes it raises a red flag.
Councillor Lumley.
Thank you, through the mayor. I'm a big proponent of increasing fees, especially when I think they're too low, but I was wondering if the business license fees, like people that are renewing them, I wonder if there was any thought or conversation between the departments as far as weighting the fees. Like if you have somebody that has a small business with specifically lower gross sales, or you have a massive company that's making large dollars, not to point anybody out, but have you ever considered that? Has it ever been a consideration?
Yes, certainly when we were looking at the other municipalities and their business license models, Powell River, for instance, they base the fee on the number of employees. So that's something we kind of considered. That would mean a whole rewrite of our bylaw, which we could do. But for now, we just wanted to get something on the table, and so it's just an increase in the fees. Certainly, it's something we should be looking at.
Councillor DeAndretti.
Thanks, Mayor. I think my understanding after reading this report, I just want confirmation that this increase will not necessarily be sufficient to cover all the costs of the town in issuing and monitoring and so on.
Yes, certainly when the Director of Finance went through and did the analysis there, that was surprising how much time, I knew that we spent quite a bit of time doing our licensing system, but it really was a bit of a wake-up call that there's a lot of time, not just from bylaw either, or a lot of the departments, and then especially with the short-term accommodation rentals, they get referred out, so it's the fire department, Vancouver Coastal Health, zoning checks. So there's a lot more to it these days.
Yes, Mayor White, thank you. Attachment C to this report is a schedule that sets out an analysis of costs for business licenses. So the cost of annual business license renewals for a typical smaller business with no complicating factors is about $133. And for businesses that involve food service or some kind of restricted activity that can go all the way to firearm sales, for example, the renewal of there's a couple more steps, 172. So definitely the business licenses are covering the costs under these schedules for the recurring years. And maybe a little bit more, because these are the most direct costs only. However, it's an investment on the town and community's behalf every time there's a new application. And in that case, even a smaller business doing something very straightforward, still when you go through all the necessary steps, is $1,000. And then up to $1,200 for more complicated businesses, and those pull in other parties that we don't pay for, like fire, health, and so on, to make assessments. But I would say that with these updates, the town can reasonably say we're covering the costs of running this license system. And also we operate in an area where, on the one hand, a rule of thumb is we're not supposed to be giving benefits to business. And on the other hand, we're not supposed to be charging more than it costs us to do things. We're, in that sense, a nonprofit. So I think the balance is being achieved here. And this attachment C is a permanent thing that if anyone from the public ever wished to ask or see some proof about why they're being charged so much, this would be the town's support. Thank you.
Okay. We're going to Councillor Kroll.
I'd like to move the recommendations on page 5 of the report to support the updates to the bylaw.
Okay, seconded by Councillor Thompson. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor? The motion carries. Thank you, Sue. And now we're on to item 5.3, which is a OCP and zoning amendment for lots A and C, Gibsons Way, for a commercial building fronting Gibsons Way and 172 residential apartment units. I'll go to our planning department to introduce this.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a brief kind of introduction. So an introduction to the application was presented in April, and staff were directed to draft a zoning and OCP amendment for the proposal. And the report also provides a land lift analysis. So the property is located on the south side of Gibsons Way, opposite Seamount Way. You've got two properties. You've got Lot A, which is the smaller property closest to Gibsons Way, and then you have a panhandle lot, which is Lot C. So the proposal is for one commercial building, which is to be sited, Building A, at Gibsons Way. It's 2-story commercial, and then you've got 3 residential apartment buildings behind, so Building B, C, and D. And they have a total of 172 apartment units in there. Now, a land lift analysis was conducted, and it's attached to your report. And then it estimates a net loss in land value of close to $1 million. And this is because it's going from industrial land to residential land for Lot C. And that would mean that it doesn't recommend a community amenity contribution. So when we're looking at the OCP amendment, this is specific to Lot C, the one that you can see here is hatched. And this is changing the land use to high-density residential. Now, within the OCP amendment, we've also updated the intent and description of the high-density residential land use. And it removes the minimum FSR. The housing type has been removed too. It speaks specifically to apartments and condominiums. And then also greater than 3 stories. So it wouldn't allow for a 3-story, but it would allow for a greater than. In terms of the zoning amendment, this is for both the lots. So Lot A, which you can see the smaller lot, this has been changed from industrial to C1, which is the Upper Gibsons commercial area. And then Lot C, which is the larger lot, this is being changed to a brand new zone, which is RM8. Now, RM8 is also the zone that's been proposed for the harbour proposal and for Billy's Walk. So those are specific lots that have been designated in the OCP as high density residential. So on, you've got some options on the last page of the staff report. So that's on page 5 of 6. So it's to provide, to give first reading for the OCP and the zoning amendment. And it's also to consider the OCP amendment in conjunction with the town's financial plan and the waste management plan. So you have in your staff report the comments from the SCRD and from the finance department. And then also to schedule a public hearing. We also have additional add-ons too, but I'll wait to hear some comments.
Okay, questions from council? Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm a bit confused with the zoning bylaw amendment as it refers to height and the 23 meters. Both of the 2 developments are like 4 stories. So how does that mean that height potential could be Matt?
Okay, so in the zoning amendment, there's a site, the zone itself has a base height. Thank you. I should have brought my laptop up. The zoning has a height, a maximum height of 16 meters. Now, it has a site-specific condition, so this means that the Lot C has specific requirements or regulations that it's allowed, which is different from the other properties that are zoned the same zone. So this allows, for this specific site, they're allowed a height of 23 meters, which is, when we go back to building D, I believe, is the tallest one. When you look at the average natural grade to the top of the parapet roof is 23 meters. Okay.
For that, yeah.
Councillor Andrade?
Thank you, Mayor. This regards DPA 2 and, oops, sorry. So the updated DPA, although not yet adopted by council, shows that there's a Class C water course in Lot C. And according to the document, Class C water courses do not support fish, but are connected to fish habitat and can be a significant source of water, nutrients, or food. So this water course, as a result, can be classified as a stream under the riparian area protection regulation. So when I look at the drawing, and it could be, Mayor, because it's just the start of the process, but I don't see any water course reference in the drawing. And approximately, when I look at what is in the updated DPA 2, it shows more or less the parking lot, maybe, but obviously it's a very small, so I'm not 100%. But my question is, how will the town ensure protection of this water course? And will the findings of the updated DPA 2 be considered, even though it has not yet been adopted?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So right now, a development permit is triggered when land is alterated, is that right? Changed, altered, or a building permit. So that development permit number 2 has not been adopted yet, but it is highly likely by the time that a building permit comes through that OCP amendment will have been adopted, and at that time the development permit requirements would be triggered. So then the applicant would have to go through the necessary steps to have a qualified environmental professional do the wrapper assessment.
So if by any reason the design of the building has to be changed, or location of whatever parking lot, so this will be done automatically?
Yeah, so through you, Ms. Mayor, the QEP would provide recommendations, so it wouldn't necessarily change the form and character, the look and feel of the building, but it might change where the building is positioned on the lot, and at that point it would be necessary for the applicant to look at the site plan.
Other questions? I'll look to Councillor D'Andrade.
Thank you, Mayor. It's another environmental concerning question. The glass balcony railings could be a hazard for bird collision. And I would like, I don't know if we need to pass a motion now, but there's a commitment from the developer to put glass stripes. There's, I think, staff is aware, perhaps council too, there's some stripes, they're almost invisible. You can put on the glass, but the birds can't see. This has been done with tons of buildings in Ontario area because there has been incredible amount of bird mortality there because of glass. So I think this is important, and I would like even this to be almost a procedural thing in that, because we are under the Pacific Flyway, so and we are in a lot of natural areas around, so there's a lot of birds. And
Other questions? One piece of information I would certainly like to see as we consider this is, I mean, unfortunately, the housing needs report was supposed to be on the agenda today, and we couldn't accommodate that because of scheduling of the presenter. But I think that'll be on our next meeting, and I'd certainly like to consider this in the context of our housing needs in terms of higher density market housing that isn't rentals. We've kind of been going for rentals, and also, of course, we approved the variance for the development next to this, but that didn't include rezoning and a whole OCP amendment. So I think I just want to flag that. I think it's really important that council look at that. I don't know if we necessarily need to defer first reading for it. I mean, we could do first reading, and we're going to see it soon, right? It's going to be October the 8th, so it'll help to inform our further considerations on it. Councillor Kroll?
To your point, Mayor White, because I am aware of this report that we've been waiting on, but certainly I would move option 1 that we proceed with first reading and allow other things that need to happen relative to this project to move forward.
Okay, is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Lumley. And option 1 is, that's page 14 or 15 of the staff report, but that's, I just
41.
wanted in front of me, it's just first reading, right? Yeah, there aren't a lot of, I remember this one, not a lot of other conditions to it.
There are some potential options.
Oh, there are
associated.
potential options, yeah. I've got it now.
So
I'll just go to corporate officer. Yeah. Yeah, so I see that's scheduling a public hearing for November the 5th. Oh, am I looking at the wrong one again? Oh, this is the right one. So are we doing scheduling a public hearing for both at the same day?
Yes.
Okay. Streamlined. Might have the same people coming for both. Councillor, I did have a seconder on that, so we're discussing the motion. Councillor Kroll, continue.
I just
and then
wanted to ensure that
Andretti.
it did include number 1 of the options, that there is the public hearing. It's with this particular, because it relates to the zoning changes and one thing and another, that there is the necessity for a public hearing.
Oh, there's an OCPM, or this,
No, it's a public hearing. For the
so
report.
let's go to staff on this. This is an OCP amendment,
Yes, that's
so
right.
it's a public hearing. It's just automatic. Yeah.
I just wanted to ensure that that was captured with.
It is. So what we're looking at is option 1, the OCP bylaw be given first reading. Amendment, this is an OCP amendment, and also that the OCP amendment be considered in conjunction with the financial plan and waste management plan, and that the zoning amendment bylaw be given first reading, and that a public hearing be scheduled for November 5th. So that's what we're looking at. And then there's some options, but that's separate. Councillor D'Andrade.
Yeah, just the housing is a need assessment. You're anticipating that will be coming soon. I'm just thinking in terms of
Do we
timing.
have Matt scheduled?
Through the mayor, yes, we've got him coming on October 8th.
Okay, yeah. Any other discussion of this motion? All those in favor? The motion carries. And Councillor D'Andrade?
Yeah, just there's optional about a public information meeting. I know we have been discussing, and we've done in the past that we require the developer to do a public information. I'm not sure if it's better that we have the house need assessment first. I would think it is better, then the public can also be informed of the needs. But I just want to see how council reacts to that. I feel it's important to have the.
I think this is your chance to put the options in front of us. This is the time to put it forward, regardless of the.
Okay, so I will.
We're not going to have that option before us ahead of the, in addition to the housing needs report, because this is a separate.
Okay, so yeah, I would like to put it that the developer prepares a
Public information
yes.
meeting, yeah, which used to be kind of a standard option that we practice here. Is there a seconder for that?
Mayor, the only thing, the option here says prior to the public hearing. I'm not sure if it
Absolutely.
needs to, so you prefer to be prior, okay?
What would the point be
No,
otherwise?
for sure,
Yeah.
yes, prior,
Okay.
thank you.
Is there a seconder? I'm going to second it. I'm keen on hearing why we shouldn't have it. So, Councillor Lumley, yeah.
I guess if there's no time crunch, I guess, it's like quite possible. That's all I'm asking, because we've already got a date for the public hearing. I guess they can't be somewhat combined at all. I don't know.
Well, we've got over a month between now and then.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, the turnaround we've done before,
Through you, Mr. Mayor. We did choose a date that was at least a month away so that we could ensure that there was ample time for like a 2-week mail out from this date. And you do have the applicant here that we could double check to make sure that that 6 weeks would be okay.
My question would be, are public information meetings scheduled post the mail outs going out so the engagement's higher?
Through you, Mr. Mayor.
for the mail outs will go out for the public hearing, right? Yeah. So I'll see what.
So the idea or the intent was that we would have at least a month that we could work with to have a public information meeting. So we'd have 2 weeks to notify of the public information meeting, and then there'd be another 2 weeks before the public hearing. If that.
Okay, and where does good old second reading fit into this? So we have different processes now because of provincial changes, but we used to tend to do second reading and then we'd schedule a public hearing, but now we're doing first reading.
That's correct. So, so there is an optional add-on here that you can do second reading today, or you can wait until after public hearing. Up to you.
So we would do second reading after public hearing. That's the first. Would that be the first time we've ever done that? I mean, the laws have changed, so that's.
The law is that you have to have a public hearing before third reading. So you could have it after first reading or after second reading. So you could give first and second reading and then hold the public hearing, or you could give first reading and then after the public hearing, give second and third reading. It doesn't really matter. It just gives more room to amend the bylaw if needed.
Okay. Councillor DeAndrade?
Yeah, I think because this is a big development, I think it makes more sense to give just the first reading, and then we have input from the public, we have and then we can decide what to do. And then we have the report, and then we can decide what to do.
Okay. So we have a motion.
Something of importance to consider is that input from the public is closed after the public hearing. So if it's sitting at first reading, you cannot take in further public input once the public hearing is adjourned.
Yeah, I don't like this. I don't like this new process of the provinces. I mean, some of it's good, but I don't think all of it's well thought out.
Sorry,
Go ahead.
one more piece about after the public hearing is you can't change use or density. So the only thing that you could change without holding another public hearing, so you could change setbacks or building height, but not use or density. If you're more comfortable, you could give the bylaw first and second reading. It doesn't really change the process. There's not going to be another meeting for second reading specifically, After the public hearing, we would probably recommend second and third reading. It would just be the next reading, the next step in the zoning amendment process.
Councillor Lumley?
Yeah, and just a question through the mayor. We could do the second, third reading at the same meeting.
Yeah, that's what I just confirmed, yeah, okay. But yeah, also because we could actually make changes to second reading, because the second reading hasn't happened yet, where if it were third reading, we wouldn't be able to make as many, it'd be limited. That's a change in process, right?
The intent is for you to have an option to change at every meeting.
Yeah.
But if you change use or density, then it triggers a requirement for another public hearing.
Right, it's just after the public hearing is what triggers it. So yeah, right, okay. We still have, we've got a motion for public information session is on the table. Councillor DeAndretti on the floor.
I think my concern, Sorry, I think my concern seems that there's a lot of rush. I mean, ideally, we get input from the document, so we have a better understanding of the needs, have a discussion at the table, whether or not they're committee of the whole. And then at least we have more information, and then we have the public information. And after that, I would like to have a meeting after that, and then we go to public hearing. It seems to me to make more sense. So perhaps is it possible to postpone? I know we have a motion on the table, but I can rescind the motion and maybe change the day of the public hearing to allow for this discussion.
We're talking about two different things now. We've got a motion. I mean, if that would be a further discussion, I think. I mean, I agree. It might be something we should consider, but. Do we want a public information meeting at all for this project? I think that's the question right now,
my motion is there,
right?
yes.
Yeah.
I voted in favor.
And we don't have a date set for that. We're just giving that to the developer and staff to coordinate. Mostly the developer. It's the developer's meeting. Councillor Lumley? Second. Okay, yeah, we've got a seconder, so we can vote on it. All those in favor? Okay, so that's for the public information meeting, and now. I mean, the matter of the public, we did pass a motion about the public hearing November 5th. Yeah, this is, it's funny when we don't realize until we get into it, this is a very different way of doing things. So it's kind of due to the legislation from last fall. Normally, we would have you would go to second reading and then schedule a public hearing. So why is it recommended as part of first reading? And I'll ask that question.
For option one, there's no real reason to separate second reading. It's really up to council. We put it on there because you can select it. The process is you have to consider the OCP amendment in conjunction with the financial plan and the waste management plan after first reading. So you have to do first reading, then you have to consider the financial plan and waste management plan. And then after that, you can give the bylaw second reading. Because you've done that already in this meeting, you can give the bylaw second reading. You can just select it. And then to the question about whether November 5th is too close, if you wanted to amend that last motion, you could just take out the date, and then we would probably we'd try and meet that date, but if for any reason we couldn't get notifications out or there was a delay in the public information meeting, then it gives staff some wiggle room and the developer some wiggle room to have a public hearing after November 5th.
Okay. Those are some answers for council. I mean, right now, we could just, we've got everything passed that we need to proceed. But there is the concern about it being pretty tight, and we're scheduled a public hearing here after first reading, which makes it all very tight. Yeah, Councillor Lumley?
Through the mayor, so basically, second reading is just useless waste of time. Is that what I'm hearing?
Didn't used to be. It used to be part of a regular part of the routine.
Well, yeah, but we used to have a meeting, and then another meeting, and then a public hearing, and then another meeting, right? Like, it wasn't, we just didn't do all the readings in one meeting, but from what I hear, the direction it's just like, well, it doesn't matter if we give it second reading today or second reading after the public hearing. It's like,
You could,
It's
but yeah,
irrelevant,
yeah, I mean, the way I kind of remember the routine was first reading would introduce a development, a proposal, and then you'd have some time to think about it, and then second reading is where you might put forward, and then you'd have a public information session too, so maybe there'd be some information from that. Second reading was where council would often put forward, any changes they might want. And then you have the public hearing, and like all the changes are done so that the public can see what the final proposal is, and you have the public hearing, and you have third reading. That's how it used to work, and maybe I'm a traditionalist, but it doesn't seem like a bad way of doing things to me. Though I like to do things fast too, as everybody knows. Staff.
Thank you, Mayor. So another thing that was different with this proposal, because there are quite a significant number of units, we brought a report forward early on just to share the proposal and get direction to draft the zone. That's not something we often do. Typically, we'd bring the first reading report with the entire proposal for first reading, and then if there was anything missing or any referral comments needed, we'd wait for second reading before scheduling the public hearing. Or if there were community amenity contribution negotiations, we'd wait for that before second reading. We front-loaded the information to council on this one, and that's why there was no first reading originally, and that's why this is the first time you're giving the bylaw first reading. So right now, you've got the CAC report, you've got the referral comments, you've got everything to give second reading, so you can give it if you're comfortable.
I don't know if that's what I'm sensing up here, but if that is where people are wanting to go, yeah.
Mayor,
Councilor Andrade.
I think we still have to discuss form and character, right? So, I mean, I don't know, I don't understand the need for rushing. At the end of the day, I think what we want is to have plenty of time to discuss, to receive. If we are going to the public, I think it's important also to have, many times the public has the impression it's already second reading and, they have already made up their mind. So unless there's a reason, an imminent reason, I think I'm comfortable with first reading, and then we go through the process. We still have to discuss a form and character, and it can be a long process. And then after that, if we are comfortable, we can do second and third reading right away. But I think we have a lot of information. We still need the housing need assessment report. I think there's still a lot of discussion that we need to do.
So I'm hearing what we've got as far as motions are fine from Councilor DeAndrade, and is that we're good to go? The property owner wanted to speak, or did?
Just in terms of information that was exposed to you guys, we also had the ADP report back in April too, right? It's hardly rushed, is I guess my thing. We've been working on this application, presented to council or to staff for well over a year. It got to you guys in April. We addressed your concerns on April.
For us, it's like, it's a whole different process. It's just completely turned on its head, and this isn't the first time we've had to grapple with trying to figure out what the province now expects us to do, because I don't think they really thought about it either when they made these changes. But we're going to go ahead with these motions that we've passed today. So that one's done. And we're on to item 5.5, which is a residential guest accommodation program evaluation. And is there there a presentation for this too? Okay. Do you want this or? Yeah, yeah, can you open the window wider instead, maybe? I get freezing here. I'm just joking.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. So this report is an evaluation of the residential guest accommodation program, or the short-term rental program, at the first milestone. And the first milestone is intended to be at the time that first batch of temporary use permits expire. So this report is for information only. Oops, sorry. Okay, so a recap on the timeline. I only started this in 2021, but it goes way beyond that. This conversation has gone on for a number of councils. But in 2021, the goals were established for the policy that we have today. In July 2022, the bylaws were adopted, so the regulations were in force. And then there was that enforcement grace period until the end of January 2023, and then February 1st is when enforcement began. And then in November 2023, we had the council workshop where we reviewed how it was going. And then I should have put the date that TUPs were issued. I guess they were issued sometime at the end of July 2022. Pardon? In 3 batches, yeah. And then where we are today, early September, we sent out notices to all the temporary use permit holders for business licenses and temporary use permits to advise that their TUPs will expire at the end of this year. And so where we are today is the evaluation of the program at 2 years in. And then November, we'll bring forward the TUP renewal applications for a decision on those, and then in December, that first batch is of TUPs will expire. So there's 2 types of TUPs. There's Stream 1, which is in a principal residence. This is when you're renting a portion of the home as a guest accommodation. So this could be a room in the house with the permanent resident living in that same house, in that unit. And that's the traditional bed and breakfast style. So this Stream 1 principal residence short-term rentals are allowed in zoning everywhere where there's a residential unit. The Stream 2 approach is for the non-principal residences. So these are not allowed under zoning. And this would be renting your entire home as a short-term rental year-round in a home that somebody doesn't live in. So it could be a secondary suite, which according to our zoning, a secondary suite is a home, a garden suite, or it could be a summer home or an investment property. So those are all intended to be homes according to the bylaw, and they are not allowed to be used as short-term rentals. And so this temporary use permit was a program to allow them temporarily and eventually phase them out. So in March 2022, Council passed a couple motions. One is that pre-existing secondary suites and accessory building short-term rentals be allowed as part of the Stream 1 approach for residential guest accommodations with no building inspection required, except in the case of open files with ongoing non-compliance issues that are considered unsafe. So that was one resolution that was passed. The other one that was passed is that the business license bylaw be amended to provide that a building inspection is not required to get a business license for residential guest accommodations. So the way those were applied, the way we applied council direction, is we defined pre-existing to mean allowing short-term rentals in secondary suites and accessory buildings that operated informally before the regulation was adopted. So basically before the date those bylaws were adopted, July 2022. And by doing that, we gave the following concessions. So one is we relaxed the bylaw regulations that would require changes of building occupancy and zoning permission through the temporary use permit. And then we reduced the $2,000 Stream 2 business license fees to the $200 Stream 1 rate. So that was how we addressed the top resolution. The lower one, we stopped inspecting buildings for residential guest accommodation licenses. So what is the outcome of the program? This is a lot of information on it. What we found was that approximately 75 residential guest accommodation units left the market. That number is based on the data that we had before. So before we had regulations or business licenses, staff sort of scoped out, looked at Airbnb, and we had a list of ongoing short-term rentals. Of what we had, 75 did not come in and get a business license. Of the 75, we found that approximately 29 of those were converted to homes. So approximately 1.2% were converted to homes by implementing these regulations. Approximately 35 homes have been drawn from the rental housing stock, so 1.4%. So that number is the number of homes that could be, the number of units that could be homes but are being used as short-term rentals. We found fewer inquiries from investor home buyers intending to operate short-term rentals. And that was partly word of mouth. Realtors started to get to know what the rules are in Gibsons, and we shared our regulations on our website. 46% of residential guest accommodations are in principal residences. So about half of them are a home share approach, and that is a room in a house, and that's also a vacation. So if you're going to go on vacation, you could rent out your entire home for the 3 months that you're away. 54% of the residential guest accommodations are in non-principal residences. So that includes secondary suite, an entire home, secondary suites, garden suites, and those included the pre-existing units. We have found 29 new commercial guest accommodation units, so hotel rooms. So that's the Gibsons Landing Inn. They, at the time we drafted the bylaw, they were a non-conforming residential use, and they converted to basically short-term rental use or hotel use. And we only got one complaint per year. So one in 2023 and one in 2024. So not very many complaints, which is great. The heat map on the right shows the areas of higher and lower rental frequency, representing the number of rented days in the year, with the red dots representing the higher rental frequency. So we can see where the high use areas are, and they're in the areas that are walkable to Lower Gibsons Landing area. Okay, so now I'm going to go through council's goals and some data that we found from it. So the primary goal was to retain the long-term rental supply. And what we see here in this table, Stream 1 is green and Stream 2 is orange. So under Stream 1, there's somebody living in the home. Either the owner lives in the home or the renter lives in the home, and they're renting out, they're sharing their home. So that's the 57 units there. And then under Stream 2, we had a few different scenarios. So we had 21 where the owner lives on the property, so they could have been renting a secondary suite, a garden suite, or something. And then we've got a scenario where the renter lives on the property. So it was a tenant that was in one of the units and then a short-term rental in another. And then we had 10 situations where the owner lived elsewhere. So from there, we looked at, so the number there, 35 lost from the rental supply. So 35 units are lost. However, 25, in 25 of those situations, somebody is living on the property, just not in the rental unit. So that's where the 1.4% of the housing stock came from. So goal 2, keeping the scale of business appropriate to residential neighborhoods. We found that in this situation, the operator or designated responsible person lived on the lot, so there was about 76 business licenses for that situation. Or we had someone else living on the lot, which was 6, and then we had no one living on the lot, which was 10. So most of our business licenses, somebody is around, the designated responsible person or the renter or the owner. And so we found that really helped keep the the rowdy guests at bay, or the accountability for the operator was there. And we only received 2 complaints. So that also supports that was met, so that the scale of the business was appropriate. Under goal 3, responding to the needs of homeowners who wish to have added revenue, we got some data from AirDNA, and it was a point in time sort of data grab. We found that under stream 1, there was a revenue of about $1.5 million, and under stream 2, there was a revenue of $1.3 or $1.4 million. So overall, it looks like homeowners are making a revenue, which was part of the goal for this, this regulation. And then goal 4, providing tourists with accommodation options for staying in and visiting Gibsons. So this just breaks down the type of commercial accommodation units we have, commercial accommodation being hotels, motels, that kind of situation, and then residential guest accommodation. So we have 155 hotel rooms in Gibsons. Most of them are 1 bedroom, so 154 of them are 1 bedrooms, and we've got 1 2-bedroom unit. Of the 154, 31 units have kitchenettes, and those are mostly from the Gibsons Landing Inn. And then there's 1 2-bedroom with a kitchenette. And then the average nightly price, or price per night, ranges from $150 to $165 to stay in a hotel in Gibsons. And then under the residential guest accommodation, we have 92 opportunities to stay in Gibsons, and they range from 1 to 4+ bedrooms. So there is a variety there. And then the average nightly price is $215 to $270. So the RGAs are definitely providing more options for families or for larger bedroom units for rent. And then this is an overview of the operational goals. So goal 1 was to have clarity of regulation and process. So the rules, they took some time to learn, but overall, staff find that the rules are, we understand them. The council's resolutions did add a complexity to the process of implementation, but we're getting through that. And then goal 2 is high level of initial compliance in the first 6 months. So we had about a 50% compliance rate, so not very high. And that was mainly just advertising without a business license. So there was a lot of follow-up with short-term rental operators to say, make sure you're posting your business license with your ad. And now we're at 99% compliance with that situation. And then for principal residence compliance, we've got 95%. So there's a few out there that are saying it's their principal residence, but it's not, and they're renting it a lot more than they should be, basically, or they're away. or switching units is what we're finding. So then there's the ease of enforcement. We looked at whether we should be adding any more ticketing, reasons for ticketing so that we can enforce, but the bylaw department has said it's been straightforward. They haven't felt the need to use tickets for any other reason, so everything's there. And then goal 5, cost recovery. So this table just goes over the revenues and expenses. This is in 2023, so this was the heaviest year where we had to pay for the program development. So we had a consultant come in and help us draft these regulations. The issuing of business licenses took a lot. It was very staff intensive. There were a lot of touch points throughout the organization, the building department, the planning department, bylaw officers doing inspections. So the initial issuance of business licenses was a lot. The processing of TUPs and then the payment of TUPs basically cancel each other out. So that was just staff time in reviewing them, and then the revenue received. And then the business license revenue was $65,000 for that first year. So we did not recover costs in that year. For 2024, we're not going to be paying for the program development, and the issuing business license is going to be at about 50% of that because they're a lot of them are going to be renewals, so they're very straightforward. The work's been done. But the recovery is probably going to be seen in the next 2 to 3 years. So next steps in the process, just as a heads up, so September 9th, we sent the notices out to the TUP holders. We're expecting a batch of TUP renewal applications to come in October. We're getting inquiries about people wanting to book over Christmas or into the new year, and they're wanting to secure their TUPs as soon as they can. In November, when we process those TUP applications, it will include a notice to the neighbors. It will include a sign on the property, a newspaper ad, and then a council renewal decision. And those TUPs can be renewed for up to 3 years, so anything up to 3 years. And then just a note on the OCP and zoning amendment, or the OCP and zoning update we're doing. We will be seeking some broader feedback on short-term rentals in Gibsons, and on the policy, so that could feed into the update to the zoning bylaw and OCP. And those are expected to be adopted at the end of 2025. So that's something to consider for the TUP renewal process. And that's it.
Okay, there's a lot of data here that I don't know if we knew all this was coming. It's been a lot to process, and I think we'll continue to keep looking at it. And I do think we've given McElhaney some direction already, and that we do want to make sure having a new approach is addressed in the new zoning bylaw. But I think we should also, now that we have all this data, have probably a workshop or a special committee of the whole to discuss just this report, and how we want to take this information forward. I think another key piece of information we're going to get is we're supporting the renewals for sure, and how many do renew. It does look like kind of in the revenue from the first year to the second year, some must have dropped off. So based on other decisions, based on the market, I'm sure there are some operators who decided to do something else with their space, and it'll be informative to see how many renewals we actually get to help move forward. And I think we definitely want to see this renewal process to be as smooth as possible for the operators and for staff, not take up a lot more staff time, but I do understand it is a TUP, it's legislated, so definitely that the signs going up and the notification of neighbors, that definitely has to happen. It has to come to council. But I mean, there might be some other things like needing people to, I think some people out there I've already heard from are concerned they need to completely fill out their forms again, and really all staff needs is if there are any changes to the operation, right? So I just want to confirm that now so we can make sure we get that information out there to people.
Thank you. Yeah, we do need application forms to be signed by the property owner. And if there's any new information on a short-term rental that's operating, like if there's another bedroom being added, then we need the updated information. But if it's just a renewal, we just need to know that they want to renew it, and we need their signatures authorizing that.
Okay, and something else I want to frame for council. We'll try to schedule a meeting. I don't know if I'll seek feedback now about like what timing people want to see from that. I think it might be helpful to have after the renewal process because we'll have a little more information then too. Also, I just want to. I don't want to be making any directions or recommendations today. We'll save that, but I'm hoping that council can consider what we're up against here with the TUP renewal and the term of that TUP renewal. I think we should start thinking about that. That's a decision we'll have to make when those renewals come forward. But we'd be the options probably 1 or 2 years, really. We could go up to 3 years, but if we do the renewals for 1 year, then the OCP, the zoning bylaw changes will be coming into place right about the time those renewals expire. So then the timing might be perfect for everyone just to fall under a new regime, rules regime. But if that whole process is late in any way, then I don't know what would happen. I'm not sure. That might be a question for staff that they might not be able to answer right now, but might be a bit chaotic.
Yeah, if the TUPs expire and the new zoning is not in place, then they would have to fall on the existing zoning, which does not allow them, the ones that are operating under a TUP.
Yeah. So the other option would be do 2 years, and in that case, the temporary use permit would take precedent over any new changes. It's because it's a temporary use permit, so that would both kind of give some assurance through the next couple of years and some time to whatever the changes are going to be, some time to adapt to that. So that's just something council should think about going into the decision we'll need to make on the TUP renewal applications. And I saw a hand up first. I think it was Councillor DeAndretti. Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I think the program is doing well so far, and I think we reach our objectives. And in a way, I also think we don't want to get rid of Stream 2, so I'm anticipating, even all these discussions. But my question is, are there any thoughts from staff or any examples that are happening somewhere in this world because what I'm thinking is if we need to, maybe we can put a cap as the number right now, but then of Stream 2, for example, because Stream 1, there might be a zoning thing, but basically everybody that conforms can do it. But Stream 2, are there any thoughts on how to proceed? I mean, whether capping a certain number, but how much fairness to people who wants to do, or maybe do we need a analysis of market of needs? Because as soon as, for example, if the Sunnycrest Mall which there's a development that may go there if they get the funding, we're going to lose a bunch of rooms as well, which also you cannot really compare with
Sunnycrest Motel.
motel, sorry. Motel. So anyways, I'm just anticipating if there's any model like to base on, and I'm worried more with Stream 2, because we want to have some, but how to balance all these interests.
Sounds like we might already be having the policy discussion that we want to have at this meeting that's going to focus on, but was that a question there? Okay.
Yeah, so through the mayor, Stream 2 is specifically looking at allowing them in secondary suites, accessory dwellings, or entire homes. What the policy direction was, what it was intending was to not allow that, but if council did want to allow it, you could spot zone specific properties. So ones that have, I mean, we could look at that use map and look at like the high concentration areas potentially. Part of the thinking originally was to support more in the Lower Gibsons Landing area in the harbor. So that could be a consideration. But to allow it outright, it would have to be zoned for it. So it would have to be allowed under zoning.
Yeah, I think this is really a discussion for the meeting that we want to be having in the workshop, or I don't want to go too far down this road, but does anyone else have any? Yeah, I mean, I just, good news. I want to highlight a couple of things that I thought were really good news in this report, which is the 2 complaints. Obviously, that's great, and I mean, one complaint was kind of perhaps frivolous that we all saw that came in, and another complaint was about garbage, which kind of happens, in town. So it was a bear overturning garbage, which it's not a surprise that that's pretty amazing actually that there was only one complaint of that for over 2 years, and then. I thought it was really interesting that the 35 units of only 10 are unhosted with no one else living on the property. That represents 1.4 of our housing stock. So for it might be, as we add more rentals, and it's pretty justifiable to support tourism with a number like that, I think. So those are some points that jumped out at me. One I'm concerned about, though, is it seems to be backwards in a lot of other communities. Is the hotels are actually cheaper here than the short-term rentals, like that number of 250 and up. Was that an average, or I mean, there must be some that are lower than that.
That was an average.
Yeah.
Yeah, we took a look at all of them and looked at all the prices, and it depends on what's in the room or the views.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so we've got this for information, and we will try to schedule like a workshop. So what I'm hearing from council would be preferred. Yeah, okay. We'll work on scheduling that. And next meeting is October the 22nd, Committee of the Whole meeting anyway. We've got a council meeting October 8th, but next Committee of the Whole is October 22nd at 3:30. And I need a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor DeAndrade, seconded by Councillor Kroll. All those in favor? Motion carries.
Try there.